Hello and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman. Joining me right now is Senator David Vitter on the phone with us from Washington, D.C. Senator Vitter represents the state of Louisiana, and thanks for being with us today, sir.
Thank you, John. Thanks for the invite.
It's our pleasure. I want to start by talking about, with talking about what happened in the Senate today. We will talk about your efforts to prevent members of Congress and their staffers from receiving special benefits, including loopholes and exemptions from Obamacare. But first, let's take a look at what happened in the Senate today. In a vote that broke on party lines, Harry Reid and Senate Democrats voted to change the filibuster rules, limiting the minority party's ability to block nominees and legislation from passing. This is something that Senator Reid has threatened to do for a while. Why do you think he's doing it right now?
I think actually the biggest reason is to try to distract people from the Obamacare train wreck. And that's a goofy reason to do something so fundamental in terms of how the Senate operates. But I think that's a big factor. Actually, what he's doing is reminding them of the way Obamacare got passed by pure partisan brass knuckle politics, forcing it through pure party line vote, no compromise, no Republican ideas, and then making up rules as you go along, which we've seen since Obamacare passed. So I think, ironically, it actually reminds folks of the power politics, brass knuckle way Obamacare was forged and was passed, and it's a disaster that we got that way.
Well, we're seeing some of the implications of what can happen when things pass along party lines, and I'm talking about Obamacare. Right after.
And John, and let me just insert one other note. You said it was a party line vote, which it was primarily, but 3 Democrats voted with Republicans and said, no, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea to break the rules, to change the rules, and so I think it is notable that the vote against this nuclear option was actually bipartisan, with 3 Democrats saying no.
All right, important point, and thanks for making that. Right after the vote did take place, though, the president emerged and commented, and here's what he had to say.
But today's pattern of obstruction, it just isn't normal. It's not what our founders envisioned. A deliberate and determined effort to obstruct everything, no matter what the merits, just to refight the results of an election, is not normal. And for the sake of future generations, we can't let it become normal.
Talk to us about what you thought about the president's comments today. He says that Republicans are just trying to refight the election that they lost in 2012. What's your take?
Well, again, I think what you saw today is doubling up on the sort of partisan brass knuckle tactics that got us Obamacare. I think it's doubling down on that, and the results of that have been horrendous. So I think it's really sad, but as sad and unfortunate it is for the Senate, I think it's really scary and scary for the country.
So what would you say would be a more likely scenario when the GOP does retake the helm of the Senate, whether it's in 2016 or some date beyond that? Republicans, will they re-implement the old rules or keep in place the changes, which would make it tougher on Democrats to block appointees when they become the minority party?
John, I honestly have no idea. I think there would be a real openness and desire to reinstate the old rules, but not if it's going to be a double standard, not if they're just going to be changed again when Democrats are in the majority. So there needs to be a way to enforce the rules from one Congress to the next. We thought we had that because the rules say a rule change requires a 2/3 vote, but that's exactly the rule the Democrats tore up and threw away today, actually overruling the non-political, non-partisan parliamentarian. In other words, the parliamentarian ruled, no, this is the way it operates, and they said, we're throwing that out the window. We overrule that. And so I think if there's a way to enforce the rules and not have a double standard, we want to go back to the Senate rules.
I must have been absent on the day when we learned when we were discussing how a bill becomes a law, because I don't remember this part of the lesson.
Yeah, it's not in that lesson because it's really not in the Senate rules.
Well, let's shift our focus a little bit and talk about your continued efforts to prevent members of Congress and their staffers from receiving special benefits and privileges under the Affordable Care Act. Those who are part of a Senate or House member's official office are required under the new health care law to sign up for coverage under the Obamacare exchanges. And you've been working to make sure that every staffer and every member of Congress in the country has to do the same thing that everybody else in the country has to do. But just recently, Representative Tom Cotton of Oklahoma pitched a new bill that would require members of Congress to list the official office members that they do have so everyone knows who is beholden to the law and who is not. You support this new bill from Congressman Cotton. Is that a compromise from you since it falls short of your initial goal?
Well, no, it's not a compromise. I introduced this in the Senate a couple of weeks ago as a way to get to the ultimate objective, but it's a first step, pure disclosure, so the public gets to know which members of Congress are living by the statute, which are doing this end run around the statute. And Tom is fighting that fight in the House. I'm really glad he's doing that, and I hope we get this pure disclosure. It's a first step, but only a first step toward doing away with the special Washington exemption from Obamacare completely.
Now, you've received some bipartisan heat from your colleagues on the Hill about all of this. One of the arguments for what you want to do, against I should say what you want to do, is that it would make it very difficult and perhaps even unaffordable for young staff members to work in Congress and work on Capitol Hill because they would lose the money the federal government kicks in for their health insurance like employers do for a lot of folks, the employer contribution. Is there any way to get around that and still achieve what you hope to?
Yeah, I think that argument is just wildly overstated. First of all, the lower paid staff could get the same subsidy available to every other Americans. They should have that opportunity. We're not saying disadvantage them, just don't give them a bigger subsidy, a huge taxpayer-funded subsidy that no other American can get. Secondly, within each office, we can try to mitigate for that through paying them a little more. And there's an opportunity to do that and plenty of room to do that within most office budgets. So this notion that, you're going to have this mass exodus of talented people from Capitol Hill, I just think that's crazy and wildly overstated. Basically, people are protecting their own and treating themselves like a ruling elite. And I think that's fundamentally at odds with our American democratic tradition.
Now, the idea that you're proposing is popular with conservatives around the country, but not necessarily popular with conservatives in Congress because it hasn't even come up for a vote in the GOP-controlled House. What's the main reason you think that is?
Well, this isn't a conservative liberal issue. This is a Washington elite versus America issue. And actually polling underscores that. This issue resonates and is agreed with by voters across the political spectrum, left, right, and center. But the divide is Washington versus America. Because quite frankly, Washington types like to set themselves up and have better rules to live by and set themselves up as some sort of ruling elite. That's just wrong, and I think it's a very anti-American reality, but that's creeping into our governance.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on, and the American people are starting to look towards Washington and seeing some of the benefits that members of Congress get and asking why they don't receive the same types of benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the first rule of American democracy should be that whatever Washington passes on America, it lives with itself. Same rule, same way, no exemption or bailout or subsidy or sweetheart deal. And that's important because of the basic fairness principle. But it's also important for a very practical reason, because the sooner Washington starts living that way, the sooner Washington will start getting things right, including Obamacare. When you go to a restaurant and the chef never eats his own cooking, that's an awfully bad sign. And making the chef eat his own cooking is a crucial first step toward dramatically improving that bad cooking like Obamacare.
Well, fair enough. Senator David Vitter, thanks for being with us. Have a great day, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.